Hey guys, um, I know it's been I think 4 days since I did my last video, and I'm sorry about that. Um, Even though no one's watching, I'm doing this primarily just for fun. Um, so today I wanted to talk about suffering, a fairly unattractive topic as it's not a very positive topic. Um, but I think it's really important to discuss. So, I want to start by talking about the fact that I've met people who really attempt to pretend that they're not suffering when we're all suffering, right? Um, the first noble truth of Buddhism is that life is suffering. And the big thing you should realize is that if you're not suffering right now, well, you will at some point. I think it's like 95% of people are struck with some sort of like major illness, or they have some sort of terminal illness in their 60s, like cancer, etc. Everyone's going to suffer. Everyone is suffering just by being alive. The state of living is suffering. That is the first noble truth of Buddhism. And I think a lot of people understand this, especially young people. They understand this on an intellectual level, but they don't understand it on a level that's from experience, and that's because they haven't lived. And especially, when you're given a lot of shit in your life, you're given like, even really like some of the most important things. Someone said this to me a while ago, and it's so true. Some of the most important things in your life, you never had to pay for or earn, such as your family, your body. You didn't have to pay for that, hopefully, right? Your life, your lungs, and these things are like super fucking important. I mean, if you don't have your lungs, well, I wouldn't be able to breathe, and I wouldn't be sitting here right now speaking into a microphone with Google Chrome tab open with the definition of suffering. So, I'm going to zoom in on this shit, and we're going to read this. The state of undergoing pain, distress, or hardship. And I've noticed with a lot of young people, especially people that are no older than like 16, 15, and I remember even I was like this a little bit at that age, so I can kind of forgive it, is that they dismiss the concept of suffering, and they think that it does not have a bearing on their lives, which it may not, or they may just be cognitively unaware of it. Because literally every person is suffering in some way, and they may just not be aware of it. For example, anxiety is a form of suffering. Loneliness is a form of suffering. Depression, even the flu. Like if you just get the basic flu or the cold, that's a form of suffering. And I recently read up on John Stuart Mill's utilitarianism, which essentially the way he defines it is that what makes something morally good is that it increases the pleasure, the experience and feeling of pleasure for many. Now, this could be compared to a hedonistic lifestyle of only searching for pleasure, and only searching for example, eating a lot of sweets may be pleasurable in the moment, and then you gain 30 pounds. And that is a loss of long term. It becomes a form of suffering, and you lose the pleasurable effects of it. Another thing is that Another thing is that there is a very large number of people who don't seem to understand, or maybe they just don't care, and they shouldn't really have a reason to care because it may not bother them, I suppose, is that, you know, especially things like loneliness, which I've experienced a lot. You know, I don't think very many people know how that feels. Especially if like in like high school or some shit, you were like really popular, you know, all throughout school, you didn't have any issues, you didn't have any anxieties or anxiety. And then the same thing is replicated and reproduced into your early 20s, and continues. You know, if you never have really experienced that, it's very hard to empathize with it. It's very hard for people to empathize with things that they personally haven't understood. And that's what the definition is of empathy. And the difference between sympathy and empathy is sympathy is more of like a pity in some ways. It's an intellectual understanding of someone's pain, but it's saying that you haven't experienced it. So anybody can feel sympathy for someone until they've understood it and personally experienced it or witnessed it with their own eyes, and then it becomes empathy because then they feel it. Empathy is the concept of you feeling what they feel. And there's so many people out here who are like, I understand this, but they don't. They understand it from like an intellectual level, a very low level understanding, and they've never actually, they don't feel shit. Like they don't feel anything. It's just a baseline sympathy. It's not a core feeling inside, you know, and that's a really big difference. You know, there's a really big difference here between the two things. For example, I have witnessed someone be mistreated in person, where there was someone quite literally like just giggling and pointing fingers and laughing. And that's really what sparked me to make this video, was that until you really witness that form of, I suppose you could say, bullying or harassment, you don't really understand what it is or what it feels like until you've witnessed it. And that doesn't mean to say that all forms of issues that people have are legitimate either, though. So like some things are our own faults, right? So like if we are starving but we're too lazy to get up and go into the kitchen and get water, like in some places in South Korea, there have been people who have died because they can't get up from their video games. They have like a video game addiction, and then they die. Now, that's a very tough thing to discuss, because that the question is that person's fault for not having the self-control? Is it the developers of the games for creating a game that is incredibly addicting? Or is it the fault of that culture for not managing to constrict that time? Is it a social thing, right? There's so many different things it could be, you know? And I don't think it's entirely fair for this instance to say that it's purely laziness, because in South Korea, for some people, playing games is a way out of poverty, or maybe not out of poverty, but it's a way to a better life. Because they have tournaments, they win potentially a few $1 million, etc. Anyways, I mean, these are some very difficult things, and I don't want to come to a conclusion without really thinking about it. But especially suffering. Suffering is something that more people need to understand. And like, there's so many forms of it. Like, for example, okay, here's a form of suffering real quick. Two people are married. One of them hates the other one, but they don't leave because they have children. So one of them is in a marriage that they hate. The other one is unaware and oblivious to the issues that have been building up over the years. And then either one of them cheats on the other one, and then they get broken up, but then they stay together a little bit because of the kids, but they still hate each other and they can't stand to see each other because of the betrayal of the cheating. Or two, they get really angry at each other and just fight all the time and never really solve anything. And I'm sure there's many other ways this could go down, obviously. But I know this happens more often than not. That it's a sunk cost fallacy where people continue to deplete or deposit money into something that is not giving good returns. It's a terrible business strategy. If you really want to think about it in terms of business, it's a shitty business strategy, and I don't recommend anyone doing it. Well, I mean, yeah, so like, like for example, there's so many forms of suffering you wouldn't even be aware of it. There's like so many songs. Like if you listen to like any form of like love song, for example, like the Michael Jackson 5 I Want You Back song. Let's take a look at the lyrics here. Now I know that when Michael Jackson sung this, I think he was like, here it is. So when he sung this, I think it was like 6 or 5. But if we look at the lyrics, it literally says, "When I had you to myself, I didn't want you around. This pretty face has always made you stand out in a crowd. But someone picked you from the bunch. One glance was all it took. Now it's too much late for me to take a second look." So this is like about a guy that's suffering in the sense that he saw a girl. He wasn't really interested in her. She went with another guy, and now he realizes that he actually really had some deep feelings for her. And now it's too late. And now he's suffering because it's too late. Like in almost all the songs that we like listen to, I love this song. It's a great song. But there's like some form of suffering in almost every song. And some of it's also positive though. Like here's another one. We gotta find it. Give me a second. You probably know this one. You gotta know this one. It's by Queen. Can anybody find me somebody to love? Each morning I get up, I die a little. Can barely stand on my feet. Take a look in the mirror and cry. Take a look in the mirror and cry. Lord, what are you doing to me? I have spent all my years believing in you, but I just can't get no relief, Lord. Somebody, oh somebody, anybody find me somebody to love? This song is quite literally about a super fucking lonely person. Like that's what this song is about. Like I'm just saying the concept of fucking Buddha was fucking right. Anyways, so hopefully this is useful to anybody who's feeling like shit. Or maybe they're not. I don't know what you're feeling. Maybe you're having a wonderful day and maybe I don't know. Anyways, bye.